Okay, it's 6:30. I just started the recorder. Looks like Jeff's the only one that's missing, but he'll probably be here by the time you get done reading that whole COVID thing at the beginning of the agenda.
All right. Welcome, everybody, to the December 15th meeting of the Barrington Planning Board. As chair of the Barrington Planning Board, due to the COVID-19 coronavirus crisis and in accordance with the Governor Sununu's Emergency Order Number 12, pursuant to Executive Order 2020-04, this board is authorized to meet electronically. Please note that there is no physical location to observe and listen contemporaneously to the meeting, which was authorized pursuant to the Governor's emergency order. However, in accordance with the emergency order, this is to confirm that we are utilizing Microsoft Teams for this electronic meeting. All members of the board have the ability to communicate contemporaneously during this meeting through the Microsoft team, and the public has access to contemporaneously listen and, if necessary, participate in the meeting through dialing the following phone number, 603-664-0240, and the conference ID for this meeting. Hi, Jeff. We'll start with a roll call. I am James Jennison. Jeff Brand.
Jeff Brand, present.
Steve Diamond.
Present.
Donna Masucci.
Present.
Andy Knapp.
Present.
Ron Allard.
Allard, present.
Also in attendance tonight, we have the town planner, Marcia Gassis, code enforcement officer, John Huckins, and land use administrative assistant, Barbara Irvine. First on the agenda is approval of the minutes. We'll move those to the end and get to action item number 2, 23836V-20-SR, request by applicant for site review to amend application for a multifamily development and adding a 3.4 conditional use permit.
Amy,
Yes.
may I have a minute of the board's time to share with you folks a communication that I received? I didn't receive it until the 14th, but it was sent on November 19th or November 18th. And apparently there was a note sent to Marcia about concern that I work for TurboCam, who is an abutter to the project. And I had reached out to the developer, Russell and Associates, when the land was for sale, inquiring if it was for sale. When I found out that the land was sold, they said, well, there is an abutting piece of parcel, and they had put a proposal together on it, but it was not something TurboCam was interested in pursuing. So I didn't even cross my mind that about this parcel butting up against the back of TurboCam, because it was something we weren't pursuing or interested in. And it was noted that if they were concerned, to please raise it at the earliest convenience. It hasn't been brought up in any of the meetings, but noting that I, as I said, just saw this the other day and sent Marcia a note about it. I wanted to make sure that I raised it here and wanted to make sure that the board was still all right with me proceeding on this, because as I said, I don't believe there's any conflict on it, since it's not something TurboCam is interested in or pursuing.
I have no problem with it.
I have no issue.
All right, thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Scott, welcome. Whenever you're ready. I think your microphone's muted. Can anyone else hear Mr. Cole?
I see his mic is unmuted, but we're not hearing him. I'm not sure what's going on.
I can read lips, so.
Is your mic turned on?
Yeah, he unmuted it, but.
Yeah, but I meant on his computer.
That, or does it have a volume button that you can raise up the volume maybe?
There's usually volume in quite a few spots in the Microsoft Teams interface, potentially in Windows.
Well, if you click on the three little dots on that little banner, it says show device settings, and it'll say audio devices. It'll tell you whether your microphone's working or not. It'll actually show you a little scale.
Speaking of which, Jeff, you're having another low volume day. It's hard to hear you.
What's that?
Having another low volume day. It's hard to hear you. You're very quiet. Your
All right.
volume is low.
I will try to speak up. This is odd. I've been on multiple Zoom calls with the family over the last week, and none of them had a problem. I don't know why. It must be unique to Teams or something. I don't know.
You're coming across loud and clear on mine.
Yeah, I would say you're loud to me as well.
Oh, okay. Well, then maybe you need to turn the volume up on your end then.
Unfortunately, that was exactly the case, Jeff.
Okay.
Scott, if you need to, you can always call in and use the phone so we can hear you. And then you can still have the screen up so you can see what's going on. Yeah, it shows your mic on mutes for you, but you're not coming across to where any of us can hear you.
Under device settings, so there's the three dots that Jeff talked about for more actions. And then device settings, there's towards the bottom, there's microphone, and you can select different microphones potentially. It sometimes helps, at least on Zoom, to select the wrong one, apply it, and then switch back to the one you want. There's also levels you can select possibly.
I just re-brought you back in, Scott, when you tried to come in new. Try it now, see if you can.
Yeah, can everybody hear me now?
Yes, we can. That's
Oh,
it.
there we go. All I did is get out, get back in, so I don't know what changed, but
Well,
sorry for the delay, everyone.
Face is frozen, so, but we can hear you.
Wonderful. Good evening. So tonight's purpose really is just for an update for the board. What I'd like to start with right off is, at the request of the chairman at the last meeting, we have an outstanding issue, or I should say a letter from the Concom in reference to the septic system locations in the wetlands. And I had given the board an 8.5 by 11 with basically a colored outline on it, which shows the nitrate setbacks applied by New Hampshire DES criteria.
Yeah, I received that, and actually on my list of questions, I was going to ask if you could explain a little bit more about that. What does it mean? What are we looking at here?
Yeah, absolutely. I've actually invited Joe Nichols. If hopefully you'll be able to hear him as well. Joe Nichols is our licensed septic designer and inspector from our office, and he could certainly relay that a lot better than I could. Joe, are you there?
Yep. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay, excellent. So nitrate setbacks, what they are is a
Do I have
distance.
the proper screen up? You guys see it?
Yep, you see it.
Yeah, we can see that. Okay.
Yeah, we got it.
So nitrate setbacks are a distance developed for the state based on the amount of loading or the amount of gallons per day that the leach fields will be receiving. What it does is it takes a larger distance from a point of travel from the leach field downslope, and then half the distance of side slope, and then half the distance of that on the upside of the leach field. And what that does is it allows for the calculation of the treatment and dispersal of the nitrates before they go off property. So that pink or reddish colored line that you see are the limits of what the nitrates are allowed to do on site. based on the state's criteria. We have to be able to retain those on site. That's one of the state's major criteria. They will not waive that. So that pink line dictates where we can put the leach fields because it cannot go over the dark black line, which is the outer property boundary.
And how do you know you won't exceed that?
That's based on the state's worst case scenario. We're actually pre-treating this. So we're actually treating the effluent. Those nitrate setbacks are based on a conventional system. So we're well below the limits of where the nitrate would travel. But we have to use the worst case scenario.
So one of the things I'm looking at here is that the actual wells are within the circle, for the two most southerly leach fields. So you don't have any concerns about nitrates leaching into those wells?
There shouldn't be. There should, that's all based on the Water Bureau and their protective wall radius. And they take that all in consideration. And that's also based on a different aquifer as well, because all of your stuff that's subsurface is taking place in the upper layer of the soil and being treated in the first couple feet of the soil before it disperses down and through to the casing area. So it's traveling laterally as opposed to going down where your bedrock wells are sealed and grouted and they're pulling from a different source potentially.
I kind of get that, although we're working on another project for approval dealing with a quarry where they were talking about fracturing, and so that's not a concern.
Nope, it shouldn't be based on the drinking water standards.
Here's the question I have is how do you keep the effluent from flowing in those odd shaped circles that you've drawn? Does that make sense? I mean, I could see if the circle was symmetrical to, around the field, but it's, when you draw the line down the property line and across and then loop it around, how do you know it's all going to flow and bloom in that fashion as opposed to spread out evenly from the center point?
Yep. So it's based on the travel distance, based on the slope of the topography of the soil itself. So your downslope point, you can see where the wetland is your low point, and that's why we have a further distance away from the actual leach fields, because the effluent's going to travel further downslope than it will upslope or side distance. And that's why there are different distances that the state requires us to have.
But with the flow showing there going into that wetland area, there's not going to be any migration. See down in the southeast corner there, where there's an outlet for that wetland area. There's not going to, if you were to have nitrates in the wetland area itself, there's not going to be any migration out that outlet.
So New Hampshire DES actually has a point where if your nitrate setback comes in contact with a wetland, that wetland takes care of or treats or slows down the nitrates and treats the nitrates better than the soil, potentially, is what their thought process is. So if we had a wetland that contained all the way up across this property, your nitrate setback would actually stop at that. So we could put the leach fields actually essentially closer. But we're showing it contained completely on the property, even with the wetlands.
Yeah,
If that makes sense.
I had a question, but you show it completely on the property line, but the bottom circle has two suspiciously straight lines right along the property line, where the one upstairs or the one on the top is all, curved. So it seems a little odd to me that line along the property lines on the bottom are straight right along the property lines.
That's the upslope line, and it's parallel with the grades out there. So when you do this, you have to take the grades into consideration, and it's kind of an average coming across. So you'll see on the downslope side where that little finger comes up in kind of where the wells are, just to the bottom right. That's the further distance. And then on that property line side, it's flat going across, but that's still your upslope side. So that's what your distance is coming around. So the circles concentric are further out, and that's why your distance is flat on that one side.
Andy, you had a question?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. Obviously, I had the same kind of general question as Ron, because looking at the arc around it and the gradient, if you look at it where it abuts the property line, and then you see the relatively tight topography circles, that's actually a downhill slope at that point, coming off that hill. So I was also questioning the circles there. And the other piece that I had a question on is, so when we talk about leaching of septic fields and into wetlands, one of the big things that insurance carriers and places like that are looking at are the concerns with feminization of fish and aquatic life, such as frogs, toads, which are all due from the byproducts of human excrement from people on cancer treatments, metastatic drugs, other things like that. How is that factored into it? Because septic systems do not clean up medication waste that's expelled.
Yep, that's correct. We've seen some studies, such as the lagoons over in Exeter, downstream, are producing some effects due to fish. They have done some studies on that. A lot of your stuff or your medications, 10% of your body actually retains it, and then the rest actually goes out into the septic tanks and then gets diluted out through the process. New Hampshire DES hasn't really come up with a standard that we've seen in the subsurface regulations for that yet. Their main concern is nitrates, or that are in the regulation that we can actually put numbers to based on science. Again, these are all getting pre-treated, so they're getting aerated. So this is our worst case scenario, and we meet all the criteria for the state based on that. The distances away from the wetland, we're well away from that based on the state standards. You can see there's a dashed line that goes around the edge of the wetland. That's the wetland setback, and we exceed that. That's the distances that would affect the wetland themselves should any effluent break out and come in contact with the surface of the ground. And that's why we have a 75 or a 50, depending on the type of wetland out there.
Okay. And you're saying that, just for my own clarification and reinforcement of what Ron asked, that the red line that parallels the property line on what would be the, I believe the west side of the property, that you do not expect any further migration of the nitrate because of the flat topography that encompasses 3 of the 4 sides there?
That's correct. Yeah, that's the upslope side. That's your least restrictive. So it's going to all flow downslope from there.
What about in extremes of precipitation or drought? We've had up to 15 inches of rain in a 3-day period, and we've certainly seen a lot of drought sometimes. What would the impact of that be?
There shouldn't be any impact at all. All the tanks are sealed, so they're all tight, especially on the pretreatment units. All of the collection units are based inside the system or inside the units as well, and then pumped out into these tanks. Everything's subsurface and everything's based on seasonal high water tables, which are at the high point in the springtime. It's not based on drought conditions or anything like that. It's based on your worst case scenario. We look at indicators within the soil, which shows saturation times in the springtime at the most heightened amount of water. And then we base all of our calculations off of the high side, which is your worst case scenario. So all of your separation distances for your leach field are essentially over exaggerated on your low side because of your high side's your most restrictive. We design on that. And then your separation distance on your low side is actually further away from the seasonal high water table. and we meet all the criteria for that as well. And again, we're pre-treating this, so your reduction of nitrates as well as your BODs and total consolidated solids are down than a normal leach field would be.
And sorry, one more follow-up before. And so last question, does any of the drainage feed into septic systems?
No.
No drainage feeds into any septic system.
No.
Jeff, you had a question?
Yeah. You mentioned pre-treatment a couple of times. What does that consist of?
Yep. Pre-treatment consists of an existing septic tank, your standard one that collects all of your solids. Then it flows into an aeration system. And then from there, the effluent is aerated. Hold on, I just got a window that popped up. So it's aerated to the point where the effluent breaks everything down. The bacterial microbial actions are increased, and it treats the effluent and breaks down. It's essentially the same thing that the municipal systems use, just on a much smaller scale.
All right, any other questions for Joe before we move on?
We all set with this now, you think?
I think so. Thank you, Scott. Thank you, Joe.
Yep, you're very welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
You're welcome. Have a good night.
Okay, so continuing on, I'd like to just basically, update everybody on some of the revisions we did at the request of our previous meeting. Hopefully everybody received a copy of the site plans. We did add at the beginning of the project, no parking signs allowed along the roadway. That was one of the commentary that we had. We have updated all the site plans to display the new building design. If we can keep going to the site plan, David has not yet. David Vincent, the surveyor. Yep, so you can see all the buildings there have been revised to the proposed building we looked at last time. The internal loop, that was a little discussion. We can go to the previous one. Down one. Right there. On the previous loop there, you can see that we have added the internal sidewalk for pedestrian access, which ties into the sidewalk along the main thorough road. Now that we have situated and gotten basically the building design approved, I went back and looked at it, and there were areas where we could actually better fit the design with the set-in buildings, and I was able to actually lower the road approximately 2 feet on the latter half of the project. So now that the buildings are set in the ground, like we had talked about to meet the criteria, the road was actually, I was able to lower that in some locations. So it'll look a lot better aesthetically as well.
Oh, no, you're not building in a bowl. You can't do that.
Oh, it won't be a bowl. Drainage still works. I promise.
That was a poke at a comment that I got when I was discussing that the last time we talked about it.
Yep. We have updated the lighting plan. We have added candle, if I say it properly, candle foot to it to show the 1.5 candle there on the main. Yep. Back up one. Right there. So we show the main candle foot for the main, where the lights are, that will be for all the, you can see all the parking spaces are illuminated for safety. And the I went over with the client as well, and a little hard to see, but each unit has also its own security light over the garage. So you can see that as well. So that will just light up enough to have a safe access into the buildings and their car. We are not trying to illuminate the whole site and cause issues with the abutters. So we did try to do that as well. One of the outstanding comments from the previous meeting, we have added a note on the landscape plans on the eastern side for the abutter. the units along that side, it was noted, they requested that any area that was found to be thin on the east side be filled with native species. I talked to the landscape architect, and he had added that note similar to what is in the entrance way where the woods trail is for the opposing abutter. So if we can go, yeah, keep going down. Actually, I think there's separate plans, but this is on the plan set here. If everybody had the landscape plan, I assure you the note is on there, but there you go. If you go down on the right side there. Screening to be provided along the eastern edge in specific areas where vegetation voids are determined to exist. So hopefully we'll be able to enforce that buffer area for the abutter. I hope that takes care of the concern over there. We are in receipt of a traffic study from Vanessa, traffic engineers. We have submitted that for review. Du Bois and King has that, and I believe have started their review. And we have also sent it out to New Hampshire DOT and awaiting their commentary. In short, basically it says that our design is adequate. For the current build out right now, they do not need decel lanes or turn lanes off of Route 9. It's a fairly well written document, so you can go through that at your leisure. And again, I know Du Bois and King is looking at that because they had asked for another copy. So other than that, Du Bois and King has all our latest plans. I believe they have been in contact with Marcia and starting their review. So hopefully prior to the next meeting, we will get their review comments, be able to respond and have a good package for the board. So if there's any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Thank you very much. Jeff has a hand up.
Yeah, you mentioned DOT, so have they agreed yet that no left turn lane is needed?
We have not seen a response from New Hampshire DOT. They were awaiting the traffic impact study from Vanessa, so it is in their hands. Hopefully it doesn't take as long as their standard time, but we should hopefully have an answer by the next meeting. But it is currently under review.
I mean, we are scheduled for a public hearing, right?
This
Yes.
is
So I've got a list of questions and things. I had a couple marked off. That was one of the two. The other was about the septic nitrate setback. So maybe I'll hold the rest of them until get beyond the public hearing.
Scott, I have a question on the traffic. On the report, it says that the left-hand turn on Route 9 was found to be justified. And then the next sentence says installation of the left-hand lane turn is not to be necessary at this time. It seems to be kind of a contradiction. If it's justified, why is it not necessary?
I believe, and I'd have to, Jeffrey was not available this evening, but from reading it, what I understand is in order to do the study, they have to do current situation and then build out of the project, which has been done. Then they have to assume what may happen in the area at a 10 years time frame. So in other words, if there's other projects or something like that that is added to Route 9, then they say if the traffic is heavy enough, it may warrant a left-hand turn road, or excuse me, lane off of Route 9. So currently it does not. In the future, it may. But 10 years from now, a lot of things could change. So I'm kind of leaving that up to New Hampshire DOT. It's really in their purview to, I guess, make that decision.
How does that work, Scott? Because once the project's built out, they can't make you go back and build out a turnout lane afterward. No,
but what they can do is they'll actually, they'll basically keep that on a bookmark, and then if another job comes along, that criteria may be added to what that project has to do. So it's kind of a cumulative, revision. And again, that's all I can refer to is that it states it doesn't need it now, but could be a possibility 10 years from now.
But you're building out the site. I mean, I don't understand how it's justified. It can be added later on, but it's someone else's dime. It's for your development.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but I read that and it said that it was only justified for 1 hour. It was a peak hour of the day.
That's correct.
Otherwise, it was not necessary. And then they took a look at what was the traffic, and would there be sufficient time with oncoming traffic to make a left turn so that you didn't stack people up there trying to make a left turn. And the conclusion was there would be sufficient space intervals between cars at that time of day to preclude a backup, and therefore, even though the data would suggest it was justified for that 1 hour, that in reality, that was not an issue and wasn't warranted. That's how I understood the report.
Yes, that's it. Thank you. That's a much better explanation. That was the intent.
And I would say, as far
That's how I'm
as
saying that when the same sentence it says justified, and then it continues on and says it's not necessary. It's confusing.
yeah, for sure. I think in the end, though, DOT is going to say yes or no, and that'll be. I don't think there's a point where we say we want one anyways, right? I don't think that becomes an option. And I think the future that you talked about, Ron, is it's a state road. If down the road the state decides it's a traffic hazard, then that would be a state project, just like putting in a light at Beauty Hill or something, right? So that's the way I look at it.
Yeah, I would agree. As we've learned recently from the Falzone project and the one that Bill Berry's been working on right up the street, yeah, the state has a mind totally of its own, and doesn't really matter what we think. They're going to decide what they think is right, and that's what's going to happen.
I would agree.
Hey, Scott, I have another question too.
Yes, sir.
On the drawings, it says the lot is roughly 918,000 square feet, and then contiguous uplands is 8,900. That says it's the wetlands that's shown on here is like 23,000 square feet, or less than a half, like just a hair over half an acre. It seems a lot larger than that on these drawings. I have a hard time believing that's only 23,000 square feet.
I actually have one of my old data sheets from one of the very first meetings, and no, that is correct. It's actually 0.5 acres is the wetland area.
Looks a lot bigger on the drawings.
Yeah, I think a lot of that has to do with the, you kind of, when the setbacks make it look a little bigger too, once you start kind of compounding it out, but it's actually a relatively thin wetland area.
Was the cistern, Scott, the cistern on there? I just was reading through the notes here, and
Yes, I added it to the legends, multiple places.
okay.
It's there.
Yeah, I forgot that one actually. I did do it, but I forgot to mention it.
Scott, how big are these buildings? How many square feet are these buildings?
They are, that's kind of a question for Jason. I know they're 80 feet long, I believe, by 34 feet wide. 4 units each, of course. So each unit is 20 feet wide.
All right, any other questions from the board before we open public comment?
Yes, I'm looking at the lighting plan. I zoomed in on that a little bit closer. So the X's are the actual lighting fixtures, I assume. I'm curious about the methodology. It looks like you have at least a half candle power, candle foot, whatever the unit is, covering the main area, the main road to the hammerhead,
Yeah.
and a few islands of it in a few other spots. but not in other areas. So why there and why in the islands, but not for the other buildings?
As you can see, what we were trying to do is basically try to certainly illuminate the main way in, and then any parking areas or turnarounds, we were trying to illuminate as well, which we have done so. You can see on the, the closest side of the hammerhead, we have one there for those stalls, and then on the eastern side, we have one there for those stalls. The one down a little bit south of that is for the turnaround for fire or emergency apparatus. The remaining, trying to keep the disturbance down and lighting down. They all have their security lighting still, but we didn't think there was a need for the big poles in those locations.
Are any of these lights automatic? How are they controlled and under what premise?
That's a good question. I believe they're all time, comes on the light of day, puts them on and off. Like it's photochromic, and they will be controlled by the association. So there must be a central meter. I can try and find more details for you, Steve. That's not really my.
Great. Some automatic system would be wonderful. Not just timing, but based on reality, what's happening.
Sure.
Jeff, a question? Jeff, did you have your hand up? Oh, you're muted.
Yeah, as soon as I unmute, you'll be able to hear me. So wait a minute, where'd the lighting plan just go? It was on the screen and disappeared here. Okay, well, anyway, so, first off, I was gonna hold this, but to go back to the site plan illumination requirements, one of the things that's required is drawing of all relevant building elevations showing the fixtures, portions of the walls to be illuminated, luminance levels of the wall, and the aiming points of any remote light fixtures. So, that is that somewhere here? Because I didn't see it. I didn't see any elevations. So that wouldn't meet the requirements for the plans.
All right. I didn't think we had to get into that kind of detail when I read the site review portion for this. What section is that, Steve? I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's 3.8. Also, these fixtures, these Sun Valley lighting Sigma series LEDs. Yep. So there's requirements that when over the parking areas that these lights will be pointing down. They'll have so that to reduce light pollution and not disturb the neighbors. These don't appear to meet that. Can you explain?
No, they do. They do. They're actually shielded. We have a notation for that on the left under intersection street light detail. Yeah. All proposed lighting to be downcast.
But okay, I'm just looking. Where's the bulb then in these? The one shown that it doesn't look like that, but maybe it's just the drawing. I don't know.
Yeah, 'cause I think you can see on the head of the actual unit, not the lantern type, the one up above. The frame of the light is on the sides, so the lighting can only go down.
So where are those installed?
Those are the poles that are shown along the main thorough road and the ones with the cones.
All right, so these other Sun Valley lights are the ones on the buildings?
No, actually, the Sun Valley lights actually aren't on here. That's my fault. I should have taken that detail off. The small security lights are just a small wall pack above each garage, which you would see on a normal home. The Sun Valley light we were going to use in lieu of the street light, but they weren't big enough. So that actually needs to come off.
Okay, so going back to the requirements, so that light doesn't belong there.
Yes.
You're not showing the units that are actually on the house. You haven't shown any elevations showing the luminance. So those are comments. One last comment is that in accordance with the lighting table, it gives you minimum and max, both minimum and maximum lighting levels for those areas. And you've shown here what I assume are the typical lighting levels. You've kind of done them in contours. But where is it that you show you're not exceeding the maximum light levels? Either via note or whatever.
Yeah, I'll have to check that a little more. I think based on the fact that they are down shielded, that they really can't protrude over the property line, but we can make that a little bit clearer.
Well, it's not just a property line, but there's a table. I guess I can look it up, but there's a table that tells you what the minimum, but also it has a maximum value for what the lighting levels can be. And so I think you have to both address the fact that you're meeting the minimum lighting levels for the parking areas, but also you have to show that you've evaluated you're not going to exceed the maximum lighting levels also.
Okay. Yeah, I would think we're not even close to the maximum, but we'll check on the minimum as well.
Well, Scott, you can easily exceed the maximum if you. It's often the case where they try to save on poles, so not only meet the maximum, they're really bright and they have hot spots underneath the fixtures that exceeds the maximum, so they can make the minimum at the fringes. So you need to look at both.
Yeah. So
the buzzword you want is dark sky compliant. That's the buzzword you want.
Yeah. Table 7, page 54, 412 in the site plan review regulations. You'd be in the medium category, I believe. 2.4 is the maximum maintained horizontal luminance and foot candles with a minimum of 0.6. And so there's usually we get a plan with 1.2, 1.2, 1.4, 1.3, all over the plan, just to cover all illumination. That's for parking lots.
Yeah, and while we're at it, so you show that 0.5 typical, so that wouldn't meet the minimum of the 0.6. The average is supposed to be 1. So anyway, as Jamie just said, table 7, page 54, you need to address that you meet those standards, both maximum and minimum for the parking areas.
Okay. Yeah, we'll look at that a little further.
All right. Anything else before we open public comment?
Yes. At the bottom of the traffic study report, number 2, under 2021 opening year build conditions, can you walk me through this a little bit more plain spokenly about what level of service C and E mean, and otherwise explain it?
Being honest with you, Steve, I can't. It's not my background. If that's really something you folks would like us to discuss, I can try and have Jeffrey at the next hearing. I know Du Bois and King is looking at this as well, but I'm certainly not the person to talk about that.
Okay.
What was the question, Steve?
There's a number 2 transitions from page 1 to page 2 of the report. It talks about a transition of level of service from C to E, which I know level of service E is almost F, which is not good, quite a long delay. I'm trying to understand, is this project what causes that change, or is simply the time going by to 2031 that causes that change? That's what I'm wondering mostly.
From what I gather in reading it, it's the development around it that would cause the level of service to decrease, excuse me.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, the way I read it is expect to increase independent of the project. All right, well, at this time, we will open public comment. If there's anyone with us tonight that would like to ask a question. We seem to have not many people in the house, so.
If you're on a phone, you have to do *6. You can use your mic if you're on a computer.
Thank you, John. Hearing no comments, we'll close public comment. Any further questions, Jeff? Did you make it through your list?
Oh, no. I'm sorry.
That's all right. Run them down.
So get a cup of coffee and, all right, on, so on sheet 1, they're gonna regret, they gave me actually a big set of plans so I could read them this time. And, so on sheet 1, that's the cover page. Yeah. Sheet 1, if you look up at, well, actually building 11 and building 2, I see water going out, but no sewer, water going in, but no sewer coming out. I'm assuming based on sheet 11 that they don't have to use their neighbors' bathrooms to shower and shave.
Yeah, that's not a very good sale item. Yeah, it was more important to get David the revised right away we had discussed in the past meeting up front, which you could see has changed. We were still in the design process of all the services and everything, so I need to get the revised services to David to update his plan.
Okay. Well, yeah. Okay, and then I think it's on that same drawing. Yeah, on that same drawing, building 19 down in the southwest corner.
Yeah.
You got sewer coming out, but no water going in. So it kind of disconnects in the middle of the parking area there. So that was another thing I noted. Again, I think on sheet 9, they're right.
I was going to say, yeah, on ours, I just haven't given them to him yet.
Yeah, speaking of the sheet, now this says condominium site plan. There's, Marcia's already made a comment to town planner on fixing the numbering of the sheets. You've got the cover sheet that tells what the plans are, but then the numbering is all over the place. The same thing holds true. I'll just make an additional comment on that, some places it says subdivision plan, other places says site plan. I mean, there's all kinds of different titles there. It is a site plan, so you ought to make those consistent.
Okay, other than, I think you're referring to David's plan. There is one minor subdivision plan. We still included in this plan set, which broke off the 8 acres of the owner.
Okay, well, I just noticed that they weren't consistent, so.
We'll change everything else to site plan.
All right, while going back to sheet 1, so if you look at sheet 1 and you look at the roadway entrance, you've got 30-foot wide private road. All right, I think that's referring to the easement waiver, which we gave you so that you could keep the buildings back from the setbacks. But that brought up, I was wondering, it says 30-foot wide. That's not how wide the pavement will be, correct?
No, sir, that's 24 feet.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. So I don't know if the nomenclature here is misleading, 30-foot wide private road. If you're specifying what the easement is, then I think it ought to state that. And I'll note that you don't show that for the first 150 feet. You note everywhere else this 35 would. See, it's inconsistent because if you look up in the left-hand corner by buildings 15 and 11, it says 30-foot wide easement, access easement.
Yep.
And you've got 30-foot wide private road, and you don't note that there's a 50-foot wide easement for the first 150 feet coming in.
Okay.
So those aren't consistent.
Okay, I'll relate that to David.
Okay, and a little misleading. So, I mean, if you want to say 35, I think the wording 30-foot wide access easement, that's accurate. The
Okay.
30 wide road is not, and like I said, it neglects to note that the first 150 feet is at a 50-foot wide easement. While we're on the road, I don't know if we can scroll up to, where is it? See below. Wait a minute. Got all my notes here. Sheet 12.
12. Okay, I'm on it.
Okay, so sheet 12. I thought we had discussed right along a 12-foot road, but if you go down to the detail in the lower center on that sheet, it talks about, so it shows the width of the pavement being 10 to 12 feet off the center line, which means it could vary from 12 to 24 feet, with 24 being what we all had agreed to. And that's what's in the regulations. So why is it 10 to 12 feet?
The main thorough road is 24 feet. The remainder going to the 2 units to the left and the horseshoe is 20 feet because it's only a private driveway. It's always been designed like that.
All right. Does any other board member have any question about that? I guess I'm okay with that, but
Because we had discussed that, I believe, at a short portion, and I believe it was a butter or a member brought up the fact that, you know, especially when you have the residencies like that, if you go to a 24-foot pavement all the time, all that does is tend to increase speeds, which we certainly don't want in the intersections of the development.
okay. I'm okay with that.
Yeah, and I don't recall the specifics, but there was something about road width, and then they added the sidewalks as opposed, into the inner loop.
Yeah.
In lieu of wider roads, maybe, because with conversation.
There were no sidewalks on the inner loop.
Previously.
Right, and they agreed to add the sidewalk on the inner loop because before they were promoting people to walk in the road, which we discussed.
I do remember that. Yep. As the planners already commented, that you need to show the parking calculations. And speaking of which, in the tables, table 3 in the site review regulations says what the minimum dimensions are for parking. Where's that specified on the plan?
It may not be. I will add that, a typical.
Okay. Yeah, that should be on the plans. Let's see. Sheet 9. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Should there be, if you look on the southwest where the, let's see, wait a minute, that comes down, oh, excuse me, over here on the going, yeah, I guess that is the south side, where the road coming in intersects with the hammerhead there. Is there going to be signage there? Is there going to be a stop sign? That's not a free-for-all at that intersection, right?
I can certainly add one. There isn't one proposed at this time.
Would that be appropriate? I'm just worried about, you got people driving across the hammerhead and then someone's coming down and then making a left turn or something. Should there be, I'm asking the question, should there be some kind of signage or a stop sign there somewhere so you don't have people traveling perpendicular directions?
Yeah, I think what I would recommend on that actually, Jeff, is to restrict the roads on either side coming into it. So that way people coming home, they can basically just make their right-hand turn or left-hand turn. But the vehicles exiting, I think, should come to a complete stop.
Okay. That would, I'd be okay with that, but I just think something ought to be there. That's.
Yep, okay, I agree.
Heading that, coming home at night and they're thinking about dinner and not who might be coming around the corner there.
Right. Should the same go for the other T as well?
Maybe.
Coming onto the main road or the T in the back? There should be some sort of traffic, I think, control mechanism.
Yeah, on the other side of the U. I thought I had one on that one, but I will double
You
check.
might.
I might have missed it. We was going across plans, but I was specifically looking at this one because this was actually laying out the profiles and the roadway. So, let's see. My last note is section 3.2.10 of the site plan requirements have a number of standard notes that are required to be on the plans. It's in 3.2.10, 16, 17, 18, and 19. Although, if we go to sheet, we're on sheet 12. Are we on 12? No. We go to 12. And let's see, go to, it's down to the bottom. Maybe I'm missing. Well, anyway, there's 4 standard notes. There's one on 12 that deals with erosion controls that I think is close, but they're in quotes in the regulations.
Okay.
It's not exact. Let me see, 3.2. But there are a number of notes like, if during construction it becomes apparent that deficiencies exist in the approved design drawings, the owner shall be required to correct the deficiency to meet the requirements of the regulations at no expense to the town. So there's 4 different applicable notes.
Yeah, if you could please, oh, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Jeff. If you could please pan up, they actually are on sheet 5.
Okay. I missed it, sorry.
No, not a problem at all. If you look at sheet 5 on the lower, I believe on the left-hand side, keep going, sheet 5, which is the site plan. Down on the left side there, town notes.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah, I guess I didn't catch that because I see them in the list of notes and in particular they get carried from, like on your erosion control sheets. I'm used to seeing the erosion control statement, but.
Yep, no, not a problem.
Glad those were there because those are on the checklist. I was going to kick myself and going, how did I miss that?
I know. I would still suggest, though, that in the notes on the erosion control page, then that note on erosion control, if you're a contractor, they may have a full set of plans. But if I'm the guy that's doing the grading, I'm opening up and doing the grading and the seeding. I'm going to be looking at that page sheet of the plan and not necessarily the other ones. I know they're supposed to read them all, but I also know that doesn't happen.
Yeah, they have the AOT too that they're going to have to deal with. So that's all part of this.
Yep. Okay, that's I'm done.
Okay.
Little detail, sheet numbering. Maybe I just don't fully appreciate the subtleties of how this is organized, but it has sheet number 8, then 8A, and then 9. It would seem intuitive to me to go, if there's going to be a 8B. It's 8, and then there's 8.
Yeah.
No, 8A. Is that the way it's supposed to be? 8A, and then 9, or am I missing something?
We do have an 8 and 8A. We typically do it that way because AA is really only relative to New Hampshire DOT. They're the ones that require that plan specifically. It's a turning truck radius. Typically, nobody else really cares for it other than New Hampshire DOT. So those 2 pages are what we submit as part of the driveway permit application separately, and then the rest of the plan set kind of goes with that. So we always kind of number them two together.
There's a method to the madness good enough for me.
All right, anyone else have questions?
Yeah, this is Ron. I got a question, kind of a follow-up on what Jeff mentioned, having the parking space calculation. That said, I think it meets it, but we only have 20, you have 20 spaces for 80 units. That doesn't seem like a lot to me. And if I look at the plan, it seems like the northern part of the property is pretty good access to visitor spaces, but the southern part of the development, particularly the southeast corner, doesn't seem to have too many parking spaces, visitor parking spaces there. And it seems to me that you could locate beside building 19, as you go down between building 18, 20, that road there, if you could extend that a little bit, there's an opportunity to put some visitor parking spaces there. I think that would kind of help spread this parking spaces out amongst the development a little bit better.
If you look at the profile plans, that's basically all consumed with drainage at the end of the road down there. There's really not a good suitable place for extra parking. I can look. I think we went over this before, but basically we're way above what's required for parking requirements for the project. Each unit has a minimum of 1 interior, 2 exterior, and then we have visitor on top of that. So, the visitor was really put on to address Mr. Walker's concern that there was enough so people wouldn't be parking in the roadway. But
well, I kind of share that concern. It doesn't seem like 20 is a lot for an 80 unit development to me.
Mhm.
I know it meets the requirement, but I think the requirement's too low. One of my action items is try to change that in the future, but I just think it's you're not allowing parking in the road. And I think 20, given potential town events or stuff like that, or celebrations, I just think it's low.
Well, one thing that I considered is that if I was going to visit someone over there, my first inclination would be to park in their driveway. And so, I could see a lot of visitors would actually be using, the people's driveway. They can park 2 cars there if they got one in the garage. So that was my thought, that when evaluating whether I thought that was adequate or not, that was a consideration I took into consideration.
A general comment on parking is if you have a parking spot in the garage and then a parking spot in the yard, and you have 2 people living in the house, you're going to have 2 cars, which means you're often going to occupy both parking spots per unit.
Yeah, but there's actually 3 parking spots, 1 inside, 2 outside.
2 exterior.
Okay.
And I'm sure everyone keeps the garage clean so the car can always park in there.
Still get a car in mine.
Yeah, mine stays in the mine goes in the garage.
I should have room for 2. I can't get one in.
Yeah, it would be nice to have parking down at the end there, but it seems hard at this to try to jam something in now.
Well, the other thing is you don't want to add any more impervious surface than you need to. And all these folks aren't going to be in their building at the same time. I think, they've provided enough for everyone to be home and parked, but that's not what's in reality, what's gonna actually happen.
No, I'm thinking more, like Ron is like, you're not gonna park at the visitor parking for 80-foot units away and walk up to building 20. You're gonna park in the road. You're gonna park at the end of that hammerhead, or you're gonna park in the fire turnaround, because that you're not gonna go another 200 feet to park in that visitor parking spot until the cops show up and tell you to move.
I guess I'm not as concerned about it. I think people tend to actually park where they're supposed to, for the most part. And and we've already required signage too, so.
Yeah. My experience is people park where it's most convenient, not what they're supposed to. But it meets the regulations, so I'm not hard up on it, you know, as far as that.
Well, the times before COVID, if I have a party, there'd be like, there'd be 8, 10 cars.
That's too big of a party, Ron. You need to go get your own place, not an environment.
I said pre-COVID. Pre-COVID. This was pre-COVID environment.
Sounds like you need to submit a minor site plan for your parties there, Ron.
All right. Any other concerns? I think they've covered everything else. Street names and numbers. Street numbers clearly visible 24 hours a day. Those are the fire chief ones.
Yeah, Jamie, the chief,
Yeah.
I asked him again to make sure he didn't have any concerns. I know we added a note just to make sure that he was okay. He said he was okay, but we put the note just to make sure.
Yep.
So he'll follow through.
Well, question for Marcia. I mean, you made some comments relating to the calculation on possible impact to the school, enrollment ratios, those type of things. I mean, what bearing does that have on us or the approval?
Well, no, that was just more information for the board. I wanted, because people always have, I actually, and I think I put it maybe like for a townhouse style development with 80 units was the possibility of 17 students, and that would be like all grades combined. I just wanted you to have an idea. I used Bruce Mayberry's calculations. He did our school impact fee analysis. I think there's still people who think we're going to have kids coming out of the woodwork, which in actuality, we can't seem to get enough kids, I guess. We have declining enrollments, or lucky to maintain what we have. So I just wanted to add that just so folks knew that this wasn't going to bring in all kinds of children or any of the other that projects that we have. Actually, single family homes tend to add more children.
Yeah, I think in a 5 or 10 year look back, we're going to see that we're in a very dynamic time period where things are going to be changing drastically. And as people, if current trends hold, we'll see evacuation from cities and people will take any apartment they can get. I think we're going to see very different trends one way or another in the future. And I think it's going to be a hard time to plan for what the future holds based on, current conditions anyways. But Andy, you wanted to add something?
No, I was just, well, it's not necessarily adding something. It was a question for the board is, should we add the nitrate map to the DuBois and King list for review?
It's really a DES. I think you guys spent a lot of time on it, but in the end, it's Department of Environmental Services.
And I'm still not sure if it's anything more than an illustration of where nitrates can't go. So it doesn't illustrate anything about nitrates from those fields. It's just, hey, it can't go outside that red line, and trust that the design provides that. And I mean, he's got a license, so I believe that to be true. But I mean, that red line is just where they can't go.
But
DES
the state's going to evaluate that as part of their permit, and they have more expertise than DuBois and King. So I see no reason to up the bill with DuBois and King for something that the state's better equipped to handle.
I'm in agreement with that then.
All right, so if there's no more questions, there's no action to take tonight. All right, we're just gonna, lighting, I think, was kind of the one big thing, some clerical cleanup. Jeff had mentioned page numbering, things to that extent. And beyond that, is there anything else big takeaway?
No,
Well,
I just
we
come up with
talked-
a continuation date for you guys.
Well, we talked about the signage at the intersections.
Yep, and I saw on page 10, I saw stop signs in 2 spots. I just couldn't figure out where they were, but just adding it to that one hammerhead if it's not on the plan somewhere, I guess.
Sure.
And then if there's nothing else, a continuation date.
Please.
Yeah, Du Bois and King has it in their hands now, and they told me they should be done their review on Friday. And then, of course, we have Christmas week after that. So, but they should be done their review on Friday and have a report.
So
So, and then they'll have to go and address, they'll go back and forth a couple times to make sure that their concerns are addressed, and then bring it back to the board. So Scott has an idea of what would work for them based on.
So we have meetings in January on the 5th and 19th.
I would say with the holidays, so we don't waste everybody's time. I don't think the first meeting would probably be adequate. I think we should just go with the 19th so we can have a good package to you people. And then, hopefully if everything's in good shape, we'll hopefully be going for a conditional approval.
Sounds good to me. So if there's no concerns with that, a motion to continue to January 19th.
I make a motion to continue site review application for James W. Haley until January 19th.
Second that.
Motion by Jeff Brand, seconded by Steve Diamond. Ron Allard,
Alan, aye.
Andy Knapp,
Aye.
Steve Diamond,
Aye.
Donna Masucci,
Aye.
Jeff Brand,
Brand, aye.
James Jennison, aye. Motion carries. We will see you January 19th. Have a wonderful holiday and thank you very much.
Thank you,
Thanks.
you as well. Thank you.
We have a what am I looking at? Oh,
Private road.
building permit, private road building permit. Questions? What's that? Wrong one. Sorry.
Once again, the road agent, I think, did a really good job of describing the situation out there. So I incorporated his comments into the draft or letter to send to the select board.
Anybody have any questions or comments they'd like to add?
Yeah, I got a question or a comment. When I was looking at this, it seemed to me that the whole structure was in the shoreline protection area. I mean, 100% of it is what I saw.
That wouldn't be part of that would be John Huckins if there's anything to do with the location of the building. That would be something John would handle. That's not part of the approving or recommending the access approval.
Yeah, they have a shoreline permit.
Yeah.
All right. Go ahead.
Sorry, Jamie. Just to reiterate what I've said before about this particular road, having gone there and looked at it, it's quite steep in places. It's quite curvy in places. It's not paved. It's a little bit crowded. It's not very wide. There's a lot of strikes in icy and snowy conditions, and for traffic. There's a lot of ways it could be not desirable to have more people out there.
Yeah, it's one of the worst. It's been improved, as been noted over the time, but there's been a lot of tears shed over that road. But in the end, I think we're buyer beware, and hopefully they know they're getting the rural character of Barrington.
John, I have another question too. If they have a shoreline setback permit, what about wetlands? I mean, Is this a prime wetlands? I mean, would they got to go 100 feet back?
Again,
This
that's,
was a lot of record pre-zone, pre that requirement. So there is no wetland buffer or setbacks. They still can't go in the wetlands, but all this stuff, they have all their state permits for things they need for anything that's regulated by the state, and they're meeting all the town requirements too. And this actual application is really just about access on the road.
I guess my philosophical question would be, under what level of additional development, more residential use, would it be necessary to make the fundamentals of the road, the structure of it, its design, its route, its grade, etc., more desirable?
Once the association decides to pony up the money to improve their road as a whole.
Right, it's a private road.
Or, I mean, I remember when I first started going to the select board meetings, this was one of the big ones. This was a couple of years ago. They were, you know, you'd have people in tears up there because the road wasn't passable, but they bought a house down there anyways. And it's just, it's, and the explanation, you know, they can bond it and have the road fixed. And I forget the term off the top of my head, but until they choose to do something about it.
Not only has the road gotten better over years, the more people that move out there, they have more people that participate in the association. The association actually doubled their dues last year, so they are doing a lot more work to the road than they used to because there's more people to participate to help with the funding.
the whole neighborhood's actually, I remember going out there in the early 90s, and boy, what a difference it's been since then. People have really kind of stepped up to the plate and
Once you start getting nicer homes, people start to take more pride in the neighborhood. It's not only been better for the road, but for my zoning compliance issues, things have gotten a lot better out there working with the association because people are now taking pride in their property and they want, you know, to have a nice neighborhood. Where before it was almost like, okay, we don't care out here, but it's not that way anymore.
Yeah. 10 years ago, a majority of the police calls were to that road, and I don't believe it's that way anymore. But that was their prime hotspot on a Friday night. It was to head down that way, and it's changed drastically over the years. You know, improved greatly.
When I first started here, 80% of my zoning violations were on two roads out there.
So what you're saying, it sounds like essentially, as long as it's the same basic design of housing, of that lot size and single residency, the geometry of the road, the structure of the road is not going to change because they're not going to be able to afford to do that.
That's what I was trying to explain to you. They have fixed some because they now have more people in the association, so they have more dues money, so they're able to do more work than they used to.
But to reconstruct that, you're probably talking $2 million, you know, to do it correctly. So it's kind of a little patchwork and what they can do to improve it. But yeah,
there's some issues where the right of way is not wide enough to do the work that really should be done to make it to subdivision road standards. Okay, Jeff, who's the vice chair?
I am.
Okay, Jamie's computer just died, so you're gonna have to take care of the rest of this.
Okay.
You want to use my computer?
So, all right. So any objection to sending out the draft letter that that came out of the land use office? All right. Without objection, then Marcia, you can go ahead. I don't think we need a roll call vote on this, do we?
well, technically they ask you to do a roll call on
Yeah,
everything
okay.
because we're remote, completely remote.
All right, then John Hawkins, can you get Jamie to yell at your computer?
He's right here.
Oh, here.
Janice and I.
Janice and I.
Okay. Well, I need a motion first, right?
Oh.
Don't give me a motion.
Oh. maybe if we unplug my thing. I do this so that it doesn't interfere
I
with
know.
yours when you go, but now that yours is not here, I'll just unplug
All right,
this.
I'll make a motion that we approve the draft letter
This
from
is the
Mary
one.
Cassius
No, that's fine.
to the select board with regard to map 104 lot 56.
I second that.
Okay, so motion made by Jeff Brand, seconded by Donna Masucci. Roll call. Jameson.
Jennison, I.
Knapp.
Abstain, since you're sending it to me.
Yes, okay. Diamond.
Aye.
Aye. Alec.
Harold and I.
Did I already call Masucci?
No,
Okay, Masucci.
I,
Brand, aye. All right, so that takes care of that. So the last order of business before we adjourn or agree to the date of the next meeting are the minutes. Any comments that people have on the draft minutes?
Motion to approve.
I second. So motion made by Andrew Knapp and seconded by Jeff Brand to approve the minutes. Roll call. Donna Masucci,
I,
Ron Allard,
Al and I.
Steve Diamond,
Aye.
Andrew Knapp,
Aye.
James Jennison,
Aye.
Jeff Brand, aye. All right, so that's unanimous. So I guess any other business that we need to discuss before we adjourn?
Can I just it's time to put together the town report. I have in the past put a blurb in for the board. I didn't know if there's anyone else who would like to contribute or do the planning board part of it. I can do the land use. I don't mind doing both, but some of you may want to be involved.
We would, personally, I would love if you would draft up something because it's hard to remember everything we've done this year. But if you gave us some bullets to work with, we'd be happy. I'd be happy.
I'm happy.
I second.
Thank you.
Great.
One less for me to do. Well, I mean, I would do one for our department, but just for the board in particular, if you are interested. Barbara's made a wonderful list of all the projects and stuff that have happened over the last year. So
That would be great. All right, if there's no other business, I believe that on the schedule, the next meeting will be at 6:30, January 5th. It'll be a virtual meeting as we have been having. Any issues with that?
I
No,
make
it's
a motion to adjourn until January 5th.
Could I just share one thing that I wanted to pass along to the board?
Certainly.
Sorry, I was trying to pull it all up here. I just wanted to share with you folks a message that had been sent to me by a member of town. That said, Andy, I just finished watching the planning board meeting. Just wanted to say thank you for bringing up the lot sizes. I've lived and worked in Dover, moved to Barrington for a reason of space and peace. I hate Village Place. It looks like Dover spreading to Barrington. These 3 new proposed townhouse subdivisions coming drive me crazy. I think the Village District Town Center was a waste of time and money. Nothing will ever come of it. The sidewalks are a waste of time and money. I am so for more roads, so houses are on 2-acre lots spread out. Yes, that means maintenance. This is part of living in a town, not a city. Bottom line, I wanted to let you know that there's a lot of support from residents to make larger lots and less conservation subdivisions. The majority of people I talk to do not like the house on top of house look. I would be pissed if somebody proposed that type of development next to his road or his house. So just wanted to share a note that had been sent to me from a resident. I don't have their permission, so I didn't want to share their name on it, but I did want to share the content of the note that I received after bringing that up with the board.
And after several years on the board, I am convinced there's plenty of data to support this town is split right down the middle. And so it seems that it's probably, the more I think about it, and I look at all the outreach that we did and how, the zoning regulations came up, and doing the research in support of the chapter that was done for the master plan, it's not that bad of a plan in that the development, the multifamily homes, the concentration of population density in two specific restricted areas within the town while preserving the rest of the town doesn't seem like that bad of a plan. The longer I do this, the more I'm convinced that the people back in the 90s, they pretty much understood those same things that were basically evenly split in town with respect to people wanting development and other people wanting no development. And this seems like a compromise that, at least to this point, has been working.
I agree. I was gonna say, I agree. I think as I said, my recommendation is to focus on the more rural areas and was to talk about larger lot sizes out in those areas.
I have a question. This is Ron. Do you guys, Andy, do you think the concern is, these conservation subdivisions? I mean, or is the lot size itself an issue? Because we just had that one up on, what's it, Miriam Meeting Road or whatever it is, that just got finished.
Meeting House?
Yeah, is that, if you drive up there, that doesn't look that bad to me.
No, not.
That's 80,000 square foot meets that. Is that development also an issue for people, or is it just basically these,
Yes.
multifamily housing units?
I'll speak to that, Ron. For someone like me who moved to Barrington to buy 8 acres and not have a neighbor right next to me, I'm a different person than you that moved from, or someone who moved from Dover, who couldn't afford a house in Dover, but loved her neighborhood so she could have friends for her kids. She moved to, Red Fox or Village Place because she wanted a Dover neighborhood that she could afford in Barrington, where I wanted 8 acres that I could shoot, ride a dirt bike, do whatever I want in my backyard. And that's what the half that Andy is representing and talking to still wants for Barrington, where the out-of-towners want a little bit better than Lowell, or a little bit cheaper than Dover, or a little bit nicer than Rochester in Barrington. So that's the two halves, I think. So,
but my question is, people like you, I mean, does that development bother you? You think it's okay, or you have an issue with that too?
I think it's okay in Dover. I think it's okay in Rochester. I don't think it's great in Barrington, even though there's a market for it. There's a difference between market and desirability. I would rather see everybody with 10, 12, 15 acres, and you just see a driveway into the woods, and you see the guy coming out in his pickup truck, and you beep and wave, as opposed to looking out the window and waving. I don't mind driving by because I know there's some people that like that stuff, but that's not why I moved to Barrington. That's why there's not half the people in Barrington are here because of the same reason I was. And then the other half are here because they couldn't afford Portsmouth anymore. They couldn't afford Greenland and Stratham. So they said, Barrington's starting to build some of those developments. I really like that. I'll jump over there for a little bit less money. They got decent schools. I'm used to having someone on top of me. So if I get an extra 15 feet between me and them, I feel like I'm in the country. So that's.
Let me ask this, Jamie. If in fact we kept the square footage the same, but we increased the frontage, and maybe put a requirement in that you can't take the trees out in the front and the side, you can't clear cut. Do you think that would give a better result without increasing the acreage?
Yeah, I don't know all the answers. And I mean, I understand when Marcia brings up saying, you're taking away other people's rights, by diminishing their, they go from a big lot to a little, but I think it warrants more discussion for sure. There's people here that all of a sudden they wake up one morning and they have 80 condos next door to their 62 acres. And it's frustrating for them as well,
When Meeting
You
House.
have to understand that, and I think Andy actually pointed out, there's some people who come in and they don't understand the overall zoning, which is there's a very, very limited part of Barrington that you can actually have the type of development with, say, the townhouses that are approved. It's only in the village district. That's the only district in town. And the whole point of having the development in that town center area is to allow for the rural development in the outskirts. But again, anyone who thinks that just having 2-acre lots, which is 80,000 square feet, is technically is our minimum. So
It's
unless,
not even 2 acres to be candid.
yeah, 2 acres really. And we did away with bonuses. So even if you see a conservation subdivision, there's no more lots there than would have been made in a traditional subdivision. So there's no extra. They don't get any extra lots.
Right, but if you drive up Deer Ridge and look at the old style of development on Deer Ridge, it's wooded and private, as opposed to Village Place where it's wide open and next to each other. There's a completely different feel of those two developments to see the changing face of Barrington. They're stark contrast, but the same thing, if you will.
Yeah, kind of, and they're kind of isolated in spots. And the what happens is, and I guess I can look at it as a more neutral person, is you have some aging population too that have spoken out a number of times about there's no place for them to downsize to.
But they don't move either. They refuse to move. They want to stay in their own house.
Well, not all of them. There's no place for them to go, and that's the hard part. But yeah, and that's, we talked about accessory dwelling units. We've had a lot of people that have taken advantage of that so that they can, stay in the home. In fact, we've got one of our select board members who's basically doing that with his family. So, I get where you're come from. And like you said, the other concern is we have to be very careful. We have a process, the master plan process, getting a lot of input before we start making zoning changes. Don't be reactive, because we're talking about people's property. We're talking about the value of their property. And we have to be very cognitive of the fact that just making bigger lots by all means does not add value. So,
but like Andy said, if you go away from the concept, if outside of the center's district, you go from conservation subdivisions and people have to start using the 2 acres lots and bigger setbacks and different tweaks to, make it look real. I don't know all the answers. I understand where he's coming from. I feel that way with many of the constituents. And I also see the desirability and need for housing on the other hand of things, but it's a full.
Well,
this actually added very few lots too. People would be surprised if you looked at a scale of how many building permits and stuff that's been issued over the last 10 years, and it has gone down, down, down. And people get here and they think it was a building boom 10 years ago, and John can probably attest to that.
Oh, the 90s definitely were, yeah.
Absolutely out of control. Right now, everything's kind of slowed down. We do have some conditionally approved projects, but if you average them in over the last few years on what was approved, it's still much lower than what people actually think it is.
Well, I have 2 thoughts. So, number one is when I moved here 8 years ago, and when I think about it now, and what I've learned as being part of the planning board, looking at the master plan, I mean, even 8 years ago, when you look at 125 and to a certain extent 9, you look at the development that was already there 8 years ago when I arrived, and that horse is already out of the barn. So allowing further development in that small area, I don't feel is consequential with respect to maintaining the character of the town. So why not go ahead and allow it in those particular areas, give those people that want additional services, want more compact housing in neighborhoods, fine, that they can have that. That was already sufficiently developed by the time I got to this town that I don't feel that it really makes a difference. So the question is preserving it outside of those particular areas. And when I look again at the history over the last 8 years since I've been here, I just question, I don't see that those areas, I'm one of the people along with, I guess, everybody else on the board, who live in an area that's rural. Steve, you live right down the road from me. Andy, you're up around the corner. I don't see, I guess I haven't seen a threat to the rural areas of Barrington. I almost feel like we're trying to solve a problem that doesn't exist.
Well, I mean, it
That's
doesn't,
Head of it.
the zoning is, it doesn't preclude somebody from buying the property across the street from you that's 20 acres and put it in a conservation subdivision if the land's there. The zoning's not any different where you live than, you know, other than town center.
It's
The
the same
zoning's the
number
same.
of houses though. You don't change the number of houses.
No, it's look. It's just look. It's not the number of houses and, you know,
Yeah, but at 2 acres,
Permanent land conservation is the only way without, I mean, if you really want rural, then put your money into permanent land conservation because zoning can change every year. You can zone it one way one year and another group of people can zone it another way. And that's the way where people actually get funded for basically for their land. Otherwise, you're talking about playing around with somebody's property and not necessarily, you know, paying for it.
yeah, but we also have to keep in mind, remember, over 50% of this town is either wetlands or conservation
Yep.
land. You can't build in either one. So we've already, half of this town is under preservation.
Well, to get back to Meeting House Road, the north side of the road was approved as a conservation subdivision. The south side of the road was approved as a conventional subdivision. So when that gets built out, you can drive down the road. You can see the difference between what the two look like. I don't think you're gonna find that they're gonna be separated. I mean, it's gonna be closer together, but you're not gonna have the big open space. I don't think you're gonna see a big difference on, you're gonna still be in a subdivision as a subdivision. So
Can we put this on the agenda sometime? And can we actually do a tour of seeing things that we think are good and bad? I mean, so we can kind of come to the same understanding because, you know, I'm trying to understand what's acceptable or not acceptable. And if we could actually drive around and look at stuff, I think it would help to come to a common understanding.
Well, yeah, but with the understanding that it's in the eye of the beholder. There is no standard for what's good or bad.
I think my eye is different from other people's eyes, so I want to get on the same page, so to speak.
I'm not sure. You know, in reality, we are a board, number of people. This is sort of a mini democracy. You know, we don't necessarily all need to or may necessarily want to be on the same page. We may want to bring in diverse opinions so that we can reach something by consensus that kind of is a compromise that addresses everybody's opinion.
That's the
I
concept.
think my point, Jeff, is my opinion is kind of unformed. You know, I really don't have an opinion, and I think I need more information to develop one. So I'm not really, you know, on one side or the other. This discussion, I think, needs to be had, and it's one I haven't given any thought to. So I haven't really thought it through.
Yeah, I think
So
it's a
sound
good, that really why I was raising it is to just really to make it known that I was sharing the information. I wasn't going to pursue a petitioned warrant article out of respect for what Marcia had asked for with regard to doing it as a master plan item. I do think it's worth reviewing and having a discussion about, as Marcia said, zoning changes. So let's talk about zoning changes. And if we want to talk about making sure that we're conserving land in the future, then let's talk about a zoning change that still promotes the conservation of land. So maybe it's an increased lot size that says that the 80 acres over but next to Steve Jeffries that the woman owns, if she wanted to sell it as opposed to conserve it, you know, and she wanted to go, a developer wanted to build a road down in there and make a big development, then, you know, maybe it becomes a little less appealing if they're not going to have as many houses wadded into that development.
Well, you know what? We have, of course, the second meeting of every month is supposed to be a working session. We've already now continued the last case that we dealt with to the second meeting in January, but maybe we could look at scheduling that for the second meeting in February.
I think it's a good idea.
Yep.
And I've already spoken with Jen Sis about, because the next chapter of the master plan we should do that's come up, and we talked about this before, is the future land use. So that's when you talk about planning for what you want Barrington to look like and the land to be used for in the future. So because of COVID, and things that have gone on, I didn't think it would be appropriate to do a master plan chapter this year, and I was thinking next year. But that doesn't mean we can't start thinking about it and looking at different issues.
A big part of what people think of when they talk about rural character is the existence of farms, homesteads, like what I'm doing here. And you can't really get around the issue of affordability of land very easily. I mean, the people who want to do farming cannot afford to buy the land to do the farming. So in a way, I'm doing kind of a public service to be doing agriculture against the prevailing winds of economics, because it doesn't make money on this scale. I mean, you have to have a gigantic farm to make any kind of money, and you still have to pay the taxes corresponding with, that much land based on its development potential. So it's a kind of an inherent squeeze, regardless of what, people's intentions are to get there.
Which
Well,
actually
at least
supports
10
what I'm
acres.
saying.
For
That supports what I'm saying, and a larger lot size makes the ability to do that.
Double-edged sword. That, so you could reduce the population density, the residency density. However, you're also going to drive land prices up. So
Yes, over time.
yeah, well, okay, so that runs counter to what Steven's
No,
saying about.
You'll
they
drive
are-
lot prices up. Land prices will go down. There's a difference there. Lot prices will go up, land prices will go down.
Yeah.
I don't know if I necessarily agree with that.
Well,
A developer can get 20 lots or he can get 10 lots. He's gonna give a lot more for a piece of land if he can get 20 lots than he's gonna pay for one is 10. He's only gonna get so much for each lot. You can't say we're gonna double the lot size and now the land's worth twice as much. That's pie in the sky bullshit.
I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is and I'll tell you, Newington is the best example of that. There's only so much land there, and guess what? Where are those lot prices? Up.
Because of
That's
all
because
the
they have industry paying
commercial
the.
development that pays.
Their taxes are the lowest in the state.
Yeah, well, the preservation of land also prevents the extra need for services, which minimizes your tax burden.
Oh,
And
no,
that is statistically proven if you look at everybody that raves about conservation.
all right,
No,
so
that's an example of
Preservation of
industrial.
land, you have to actually, you have to pay people for it. You can't just take it from them, and that's basically what you're doing.
So
taking
point
it
of
from
order.
them.
all right, well, we'll continue.
Yeah.
Today.
Put your money where your mouth is.
Hey,
I'm living in it right here on the water.
all right, come to order. We'll discuss this on the 16th of February then. All right? Without
Sounds good.
objection, meeting adjourned.
Thanks, Jeff. Have a good night.
Merry
Hey,
Christmas.
have a great Christmas.
Hey, stay
everyone.
safe,
Merry
guys.
Christmas, everyone.
Happy holidays, everybody.
Okay.
Oh, Lord.